Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's UCF Business Talk Live. My name is Roger Phipps, COO and co-founder for Seven Lights Marketing, Bird Eye View, and a bunch of other businesses. I'm also your resource for any type of consulting, whether it be tech, marketing, etc. Excited to be here with you guys this evening. And on this week's show, we're going to be talking to a little bit of a UCF royalty here, at least when it comes to business alum, a gentleman by the name of Jesse Wolfe. And you guys may know him from O'Dang Hummus, a business that he started way back in the day. And, you know, he was on Shark Tank and did a great job on Shark Tank and eventually sold the business and is moving on to other things. So he's going to be talking to us about his journey. We're going to be talking about funding this evening and how you get your business funding. So we'll ask him some questions around that, what his experience was. And obviously, we also have Josh Lazar with us again this week. We missed him last week, but he's back with us. And he's going to be talking with us about the version 1.0. And I stress this is version 1.0 of our UCF business tool. To bring alumni together and help us connect on things that we need. So excited for this week. It's going to be jam-packed. And with that being said, let me go ahead and bring in Josh. Josh, welcome to the stream. How are you this week, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. This is lots of things going on, a busy day, a busy week, and just I'm loving every minute of being an entrepreneur. That's the best way I could put it. Loving every minute of it.
Hey, and why don't you tell us a little bit? Why don't you tell us a little bit about the software that you've been working on in the background? And I'm going to provide Jesse with the link because it looks like the link did not go through to him. So wonderful live show, and he'll be joining us shortly. So why don't you take it away?
That's great. So there's been a lot of stuff going on. So I'll give you a little background of what's happening here. And hopefully I'm streaming this live also to my LinkedIn channel, one of the fun things with technology and the tool we're using. So hopefully it will pick up a few more people there. So let me talk about how this all started since we have a little bit of time. And then we'll go to, do you want me to give out the URL, Roger, and go for all that or save it for later?
Well, let's save it for later. Just kind of give the genesis and what we're working through and what your team has done. Because honestly, your team has been doing all the legwork. We kind of did a brainstorming session. I said, I wish we had a tool that did this and kind of said, okay, here's some of the requirements that I would see. But how does that translate to your team? And mention who your team is, because that's important when it comes to UCF.
Yeah. So well, let's get started with the team and then how we got there. So I've been working at UCF since I've been 17 years old in the computer science department in one way, shape, or form as a TA, a graduate TA, and as an adjunct instructor. And through those years, I've helped students in many different ways, either doing projects for senior design and sponsoring them or helping them with projects, educating them. And for the first time this year, I actually have a team of UCF students who are interns. So they are interns that are supporting and building this project and some other things while doing some other coursework as well. So they're not 100% doing this work. So when Roger was talking about this idea, and it was very similar to some other projects that we're working on in software development, because the core of everything we're building at Tech Think Tank from a software development perspective is about business communications and fixing some of the broken things that we've researched. I was like, hey, well, we could do that because we have some things we're already working on. So to get slightly tech and then back it off, we already had a UI and UX designer working on a framework for another project. We just ripped off their Figma, if you're familiar with it. Uh-oh.
Tornado warning.
Great. Roger, where are you? Okay, stay safe. Stay safe is the biggest thing. So going back, we took we scraped some of the stuff we were already doing, and this team started learning and growing in their grabbing of insights and information from Figma, which is just a framework, a design that's just a backbone, and then overlaying that to real code. So when Roger and I talked about this before in the beginning, where I knew this could be a smart sheet or any kind of really quick turnaround, but the goal was twofold. Goal one was to get something tangible and real that these UCF students can work on that had some impact on themselves and the community. Two is, out of the product suite we're building, this would be like the baby version of it. So we wanted to get them working together, developing things that are not just for them, that multiple developers are working in the same infrastructure, having it a formalized web app, not just a no-code, low-code situation. So they can use that to build upon the other things they're building in the semester and the future things that they're going to build in their senior design team. So everyone who's had their hands on this product have all been UCF students or recent alumni. And I'm really excited that we can use this as the MVP, and I mean minimal viable product. As soon as I user acceptance tested it, I already have a list of multiple things that we're going to work on. And we're learning things like building a production and a development environment so we can test live. We can test in dev and then push it to production. Those things are things that aren't exactly taught at UCF. You're taught how to program in the programming language and development, but working functionally as a multi-person team in a environment that has a development and continuous improvement and continuous development pathway, that's not exactly what's going on at UCF. So we're giving them lots of insight and lots of leeway and lots of education from that perspective. So it's right now, this is 1.0. This is very MVP. There's already a list of 8 or 10 things the team has ready to go, but we need to make sure we're doing this in an environment where they can build and test and development. We test user acceptance test it, which hopefully all of you in the audience will help us out with it. We want to get your feedback. And then we push it to production when we're very comfortable that it's working the way we intend. So not only what you see right now is 1.0 and our minimal viable product, we're already working on the next version. So we'd love to get all the UCF business owners signing up and adding themselves to the list. And we're going to continue and iterate that based off of your feedback from Roger and the team here. And we're really excited to get something just out, but something that's not low code. It's like all built on secure infrastructure that the students are learning about. So yeah, that's it's been less than a month, but we're getting a lot of work and education done at the same time. You're on mute, Roger, because of the alert, right?
Yep, sorry about that. Jesse, you missed it. Jesse has just joined us. I'm going to add him into the stream now. We actually had a tornado warning live on the air, so my phone started going a little nuts.
Nice.
But welcome to the show. I appreciate it. Josh, thank you so much for working on that. The best thing about that, again, as with everything that we're doing, we're working with UCF to try to promote UCF businesses, but also alumni, and then also bringing these young folks and giving them opportunities within the UCF business community. And that being said, speaking of the UCF business community, kind of like a rock star in the UCF business community, I was following him back when he first started O'Dang and on Twitter and everything else. And that was a while ago. That's why you see all this gray hair. He's kept more of his color than I have. But welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I got a few. It's coming in faster than I like.
Well, it only gets worse from here. Trust me, as someone that's a little bit further along that growth path. But thank you for joining us, Jesse. You're actually our first official Halo guest, I guess I will call it, which means we are part of this show is reaching out to luminaries in the UCF business community, kind of people that have had success. And kind of sharing those stories, because a lot of these folks now we're getting to a point where the fan base, the alumni, have to switch football gears here. The alumni base is maturing to a point where they're owning their own businesses and can help other folks along. And the goal with this show and some of the other things that we're doing and working with UCF is to get folks together so that they do business with each other. And that way we're supporting each other as an alumni base. So for you, thank you so much for coming. And we're really excited to hear about what made you a success. We've been talking to a lot of folks that are just starting out, and you've lived the dream, right? You started the business. I'm sure you've talked about this at length throughout your career is your Shark Tank experience. And I saw on LinkedIn that you still have some relationships there and conversations with folks about that. And so I just like to start with, like, what was it like? Like, how did your journey start? And when did you graduate from UCF? Let's start with that.
Well, I mean, I should have a PhD with the amount of time I spent in university, if you will. So I started school, out of high school in 2006. Originally was going to Kent State University in Kent, Ohio, which is where I'm born and raised. My parents, about halfway through my sophomore year, actually almost junior year, were relocated down to Orlando. And my dad's like, hey, any chance you want to go? And I was like, see ya, sure. Sunshine year round. Let's go. So I came down here in like 2009, and then I started UCF in 2010. I, had a transfer and, do all that stuff. Nothing really transferred, which was phenomenal. So I, in essence, started school all over again. And I ultimately graduated in 2015. Now, I could have graduated probably faster, but, when I turned 18, that summer, if you will, going into college, I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. Like, I just didn't know at the time it was called entrepreneur. I wanted to be a business owner. So, growing up, I had little oddball businesses as a kid, from selling Buckeyes from my family's farm that I would harvest myself to bike shops in my parents' basement. And then in my, 18 to 20, I started a little detailing company that exploded on me in Ohio. And then when I moved to Florida, I was really intrigued with doing something bigger, right? So like with detailing, this is circa 2007, 8-ish. It was really limited. You can only do so much at the time and, get such a certain pay cap on it. And yeah, like looking back on other things I could have done, I guess to go into like car washes and stuff like that. But, when I got here, I was really hungry to like hit one out of the park, big time. That's what I wanted. Something I could really sink my teeth into. And I went to work. I'm a creative and an ideas guy. I've always been my entire life. And, I was the guy that was always, oh my God, we turned this into a business and this into a business and this into a business. And the College of Business made a mistake of informing me that at the time, there was a professor that would offer office hours. He was an adjunct professor, Mike O'Donnell, go way back with him. And I would abuse his office hours. It was like, I think it was like 3 to 6 or something like that. And I would sit outside his office and I'd be the first one there at 3. And if nobody else showed up, I was the 3:30. And if nobody showed up, I was the 4 and the 4:30, eventually until he was just like, all right, enough. We've gone as far as we can today. Right. So, I'm at UCF and I actually came up with a great idea at the time, at least in my head it was called Bumper Love. And, around that time, the Joust was happening and stuff, which is the College of Business's business plan competition. And I entered Bumper Love, and I'm proud of this. And this idea is very rudimentary, but it was a really, solving a good problem. And Florida has love bugs. Love bugs, especially back then, were really bad. My friend had just graduated college and got a job at Hertz, and they were having this really, really bad love bug problem, with cars, just trashing them. So being a car guy myself, I was like, hey, when new cars get delivered, they have a film on them that you peel off for protection.
Yep.
I'm like, I'll just go to the rental places and I'm going to reinstall the film for love bug season. So I was psyched. I got Hertz. I got a meeting going. We got quotes going back and forth. And it was like 2 times a year, 4 weeks each time. It was like a $2.5 million deal. And I'm like, I'm like 23 years old, 24 years old. I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is the big one, I went back and forth and I'm going to coaching at UCF and I entered into the Joust and I didn't get in. That was like blowback number 1. I was like, how is this possible? Like, I have a contract in essence and works with Hertz. And then Hertz came back and ultimately said we were too far apart on pricing. I couldn't get the labor to make sense, with profit and so on and so forth. It fell apart, devastated me. Right. So, I had some more cockamamie ideas kind of in that next year. And then I had my wisdom teeth pulled out in between fall and spring semesters, winter break. I'm sitting at home and I was just like, dang, I just had them pulled out like that day.
Hold on. He's still throwing in the catchphrase. Did you notice that? Dang.
Well, that's where the name comes from is, I'm a Midwest guy and dang is, O'Dang is lingo, right? So at the time I'm working for a company called O'Reilly Auto Parts. And I had my wisdom teeth pulled out. Long story short, I ended up wanting buffalo wings. Couldn't eat them, obviously. So I got Publix chicken buffalo wing dip. It was still too chunky for me to eat. So the girlfriend I was seeing at the time had hummus in the fridge. And I kind of knew what hummus was. I made it like years ago at a restaurant I used to work at. Didn't really pay attention to what it was. But I had been eating it. And I was like, oh, hummus is good. I'm going to doctor this up with some hot sauce and some blue cheese. So I did that, but it got really runny. So I'm bored at home, not one to sit around. I walked because I couldn't drive because, I was fresh out of surgery.
Right.
Walked down to my grocery store and my Publix and, bought some stuff to make hummus. Watched YouTube, came back to my apartment, and I made my first, if you will, batch of O'Dang Hummus. And I was eating it, and I was like, wow, this is. I was like, dang, this is good.
This
O'Dang.
is legitimately good.
Yeah. So I bored that week. I was like, whoa, that's weird. I'm like, I'd go back to the grocery store almost every day to get, whatever different things. And I kept seeing like nobody was making fun flavors of hummus. And I'm a huge ice cream guy. And I'm like, they got all these varieties of ice cream, a whole aisle of it. But there's like 3 companies making hummus and they're all the same flavors. I'm like, that's a weird competition. Why would you make the exact flavors as each other? There was like 1 was organic and the other 3 were all the same. So I was like, I'm looking at like the French onion dips and the buffalo dips. And I'm like, these things are high in calories. If you do it hummus style, it's not that bad.
Right.
So I came home that week, each day, and I just made all kinds of flavors. I love cooking, grew up cooking, Midwest. And by the end of the week, I had like 45 pounds of hummus. And my friends and my family were coming over, checking on me, from the surgery and stuff. And they were walking in and, I've got like Top Chef going on in my kitchen, right? And I'm like, oh, dang, you got to try this. Oh, dang, you got to try that. Dang, this is so good. Oh, dang, don't eat that one. And my one buddy's like, oh, dang hummus. And I'm like, that's kind of catchy,
There
like,
it is.
Yep. Right. So long story short, when my wisdom teeth healed up, I'm a couple weeks later, spring semester starts. And ironically enough, I've got a class with Professor Mike O'Donnell, and it's business plan writing class with UCF. We had to submit an idea like the second or third day of class. He told us about it first day, and everybody submitted an idea, and then the top 8 got picked. Teams of 5 joined those, and then you wrote the business plan for that semester. So, I'm listening to everybody percolate their ideas in class, and it's bars and food trucks, and I'm like, no more bars, and even Professor Michael O'Donnell was like, for the love of God, someone else do bars, or not. So, he comes around that class, and he's like, all right, what's your idea? And I'm like, I want to be the Ben and Jerry's of hummus. And the whole class kind of went silent, and they're like, okay. And he puts it up on the board. And then, some other things go up there. And I was really starting to percolate this idea. I knew nothing about food besides restaurant, working in them. Right. The class went nuts. Everybody was fighting over trying to get on my team. And I was like, dang, dude, that's interesting. Right. Other people resonate with this. And that's where I got the feeling, so I'll never forget it. I get a team. It's me and 4 of the girls. And, which ultimately Mike put us all together on a team. And I remember going to the one girl's apartment the first night, to do the research for this thing. And we're sitting there. And I remember doing the research on how big the market segment for hummus was. And I about fell out of my chair because it said Sabra Hummus in 2012 did $1.2 billion in sales. And wow. I was like, in hummus. And right then and there, it was like lightning just struck me. I was like, this is it. And we wrote the business plan, and it just fell together. It made so much sense. It became very clear on what we wanted to do and how I wanted to position it. And it was funny. I told the 4 girls, I'm like, all right, listen, the end of the semester came around. The joust was coming back up. I'm like, I'm going to probably start this thing. I think I'm going to take a swing at it. Who wants to join me? Because I didn't want to do it alone.
Right.
And they're all like, no, we're good. We got the grade. Like, we got an A. We're good. And I'm like, nobody wants to join me on this. They're like, no. Okay, I guess. And I was kind of bummed at the time because I was like, again, like starting stuff alone's tough,
Yeah.
And it was just kind of funny because I was teetering on the idea of actually starting it. And remember the year before I got denied from the joust. And I think even the year before that I got denied from the joust, if I remember correctly. So Mike O'Donnell's out sick. This random lady fills in for him on one of our last classes. And she goes, "You're applying for the joust." And I'm like, "I don't even know who you are." And she goes, "My name's Pam. I'm the new director for the future, Blackstone Launchpad that's about to launch." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's great. Nice to meet you. I'm not applying for the joust." I'm like, "I'm not. Why? Like I keep getting kicked in the groin, if you will. And this is not fun." And she's like, "Just, you've got a really good idea. Try it." I'm like, "No." She's like, I think it was like a Tuesday. It was a Thursday. She's like, "The deadline for the application's midnight tonight. The class ended at 8. She's like, "So go home, submit an application." I was like, whatever. So I go home, submit an application. 24 hours later, I get welcome to the joust, semifinals. And I was like, "Oh, I got in, And that was the second, like, check mark of like, wait a minute, there's something here, So that's kind of the origin story of how it, ideally percolated and, kind of came to life, if you will.
So that's amazing. I think for most people as entrepreneurs, everybody has like a light bulb moment where and you never know when it's going to happen, right? Where it's just kind of like, why didn't anybody think of this? And then you start looking into things and then you're like, nobody thought of this, really? Yeah. And then, you start looking at the numbers and start working through it. So I totally empathize with like what you went through. Now, I didn't do it at UCF. I did the corporate life for a while before I just decided to like go out on my own. So it was a little bit of a different journey. Yeah. But that's it's actually, I think in some ways it's advantageous that you did it at that point before, like for me, family, kids, all that other stuff. I had to do that post. So I guess this is my midlife crisis in entrepreneurship. So there's worse ways to spend it, I guess. But that's awesome. From that story. So, all right. So you're at a position where you kind of got it into the joust and, you started building this thing. I feel bad for whoever those 4 UCF girls were. It'd be kind of funny if you still kept in contact with them and just be like, "Look at me now," kind of thing.
Yeah. It's funny because one of them is actually a really good friend of mine, Danita. And she, she doesn't regret it to this day, but she was a big cheerleader, kind of along the path and stuff. So it's kind of been fun to, have her still, checking in periodically.
That's awesome. So you got to the joust, you did this whole thing, and then, did you just start by yourself, just making it at home? I mean, I imagine there's some food regulations you had to go through, like, and then scaling it up for distribution. Kind of tell us what that midpoint was, like how you went from, okay, this is a good idea, we've got a business plan. Did you get funding or how did that work?
Yeah, so, I probably couldn't have picked a worse product if I tried to launch. Shelf stable is the dream. High velocity is the dream. So if you get those two, I mean, it's, that's rocket fuel. Frozen's better because, again, the shelf life is 6 months or a year. And fresh is pretty much the dumbest thing you could try to launch. And I didn't know that. I was green as green gets to CPG. Consumer packaged goods, i.e. foods, category. I didn't even know what CPG stood for when I started this thing. So, especially you're talking circa 2013, today, and I've been part of, dozens of startups and helped many, many more at this point in time in my career. The world is much different today than it was when I started my first food company. You could buy food on Amazon. You weren't doing that in 2012, 2013. Stuff's being shipped to your door in the mail. Food's, very popular to order online. COVID really revolutionized that. Gold belly, et cetera, et cetera. So when, I started out buying hummus through the mail was very like, I'm not, what? There's anthrax in that, I'm not buying that. And we don't live, like, while we do live in a densely populated city of Orlando, it's not it's not structured with a bunch of fragmented grocery stores like a New York City would be, or a Boston or whatever. Our grocery store landscape down here is Walmart and Publix, really, right? So that made it really difficult coming out of the gates. And, when I was testing the flavors and putting the whole business idea together, it was easy to give people hummus and they'd eat it, right? I mean, a whole bunch of broke college kids, right? So I said, okay, I've gotten a lot of validation thus far. I got to figure out how I can get someone to pull out their wallet and hand me money for this. And how do I do that effectively? Because when you're small, it's a rock. It's a chicken or the egg. Which came first? Well, I need a factory that can scale to then allow me to go get Publix, right?
Right.
The factory that I need, in essence, I can't get without having Publix. So, you're stuck in a conundrum. So I had to figure out how to bridge that gap. And at the time, I had a girlfriend at the time. Before that, we just broken up, but we'd gone to a lot of farmers markets. And I was like, oh my God, these farmers markets were packed. So I went back to the farmers market by myself one day on a Sunday, and I went up and it's packed, and I'm watching people walk around. I had gone and shopped before, but I never paid attention to the business aspect of it. So I find the market manager, and I'm like, hey, I have a hummus company idea I'd like to try. And, can I post up next to the soap lady? And she's like, yeah, no. And I'm like thinking she's playing with me. And she's like, there's a 1.5 year waiting list. You got to apply. And I'm like, okay. Yeah, no.
Was this Winter Park or which one was this?
Actually, it's funny. No dig at Winter Park. To this day, Winter Park Farmers Market never accepted me, which is funny. It's the one farmers market that never accepted me, which is so funny to me. This was Lake Eola downtown.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, she told me that day, she goes, there's actually like a 1.5 year, 2 year waiting list. That lady making soap right there makes $300,000 a year. And my jaw hit the floor. I was like, what? She's like, yeah, $300,000 a year. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, and you're not playing with me. She goes, no. She's like walking me through people's sales numbers, that or there. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't even get in the farmers markets around here. I don't have 2 years to wait. So I went on a warpath. I'm like, well, farmers markets are the answer. They're year round. People are buying it. It's a great place to catapult the business, to get it off the ground. I tried every farmers market, Winter Park, Winter Garden, Lake Eola. They all shot me down left and right. We're full waiting lists. There's someone selling hummus. There's a guy in a food truck that made Middle Eastern food that had a hummus appetizer that kept me out of like 6 of them. I was going out to Lakeland and all over. Like, I just needed one. I just got to prove this works.
You should have just started at Palatka. You'd have been all right.
Yeah, I mean, literally, and it was so bad that I quit. I was like, all right, this isn't meant to be. I gave up on it for a few months.
Wow.
And, Dr. Cameron Ford. It's funny because that was over the summer, and then the fall semester I started back up at UCF again. We took the summer off, obviously, and I quit. I'd been done for like 2 or 3, probably about a month and a half, I guess. And Dr. Ford pulls me aside, who's the director of the Launchpad, and the Launchpad was just opening. Like, they had the grand ceremony. Ironically enough, I'm back in Mike O'Donnell's class again, another class he's teaching. And that night, he's like, hey, we're going to go down for the grand opening of the Launchpad. I'm like, okay, this is, I'm defeated. I'm over entrepreneurship for the minute. And Cameron Ford pulls me aside while we're down there during the rope cutting. There's Pam, the lady that filled in as the director. And he goes, hey, I heard you hung up the towel on O'Dang. And I'm like, yeah, it's, there's no way I'm going to sell this stuff. I just don't know what to do. And he looks me in the eyes and he goes, the biggest regret in my teaching career will be when I see your product on the shelf by somebody else, because it's that good of an idea. And just like spear right through the heart. You know what I mean? So, he won. I walked inside. I was like one of the first people to ever sign up for the Blackstone Launchpad. And I went back at it, with a new approach. And finally, I heard of and it's funny. I mean, I got into a farmer's market. They shut it down like a week later. There was a brand new farmer's market called Good Neighbors out in Oviedo on a farm that was just opening. So I raced over there. I heard about it through the grapevine somehow. And I called the lady. She's like, yeah, swing out. And they were just opening. So I got a slot. And that's how we originally started, was at the Good Neighbors Farmers Market. And we did things from that moment forward extremely unconventional. And again, being naive and new to the business was really powerful for me. we made some mistakes for sure, but O'Dang wouldn't have gotten to where it was if we didn't do that method, if you will. And it was from things like even the farmers markets. Most people kind of sit there and, they might play a little music and hang out and let you come up and, observe the space. We were bulls in a china shop. You know what I mean? We had cowbells hanging from the top of our tents. We had dog bowls. We had these stamps that had O'Dang on them for the kids. We were doing everything and anything we can. We had people out there holding trays of free samples and just disrupting the farmers market. And the idea was, we just need you to taste it.
Would have been interesting to see you try that at Winter Park and see what would have happened.
Well, you're right. It could have been the reason why we never got in, right? But it was funny because our first day we sold out in 2 hours. And I was like, whoa, right? We came back the next weekend. I brought double the hummus thinking, okay, we'll make it through the day. We sold out again in 2 hours. And the third weekend, we brought quadruple and we sold out in 3 hours. And it's like and people kept coming back. Oh my God, it's so good. Oh my, and people were buying 4, 6, 8 tubs of hummus at a time. And wow. I'm like, who's eating this much hummus, right? So I used that model and I went and I stuffed a soft-sided cooler to the brim. Must have been like 15 tubs of hummus. And I take it back to Lake Eola. And I go, listen, I'm like, we've been doing the farmers markets for a month now. I'm like, and I showed her pictures on my phone. We have lines like 6 booths deep, right? We're blocking traffic. They had to move us. And I'm like, here's the thing of hummus, a whole cooler of hummus. Just eat it. Try it, eat it. I promise you there's nothing like this here. And I purposely gave her so much hummus, I knew she couldn't consume it. I knew she'd give it to some of the employees there. So that was Sunday. Monday morning, I get an email from them saying, hey, we had an opening. We're going to get you in. And that was a massive pivotal moment for us because it really showed how gritty I had to get. And then we carried that through scaling all the way forward. So our next step was, let's call Publix, right? So we did the farmers markets for 7, 8 months. I mean, not really that long, 8 months, 9 months. And we were humming, we were doing great profit, great revenue out of those things. And it was a lot of fun, a lot of work, and we're making it ourselves. So, East End, the way we started making it originally was out of my kitchen, which was not legal, turned out.
Yeah.
Then I had to move in. Yeah. We were clean. We were very clean, very sanitary because I'd been served safe and food safe from restaurants. But according to Orlando, you couldn't make it out of your own house. So we moved into East End Market, which is over in Kareen, near downtown. John Reif, the owner, had just started the commissary in essence, and we rented the kitchen back there for like $15 an hour or something like that. So we'd go in on either Tuesday or Wednesday nights from like 7 to 2 in the morning. And it was like me and a couple college kids as well. And we would jam out to some music. And I had literally like food processors you'd buy from Walmart. And we ran like 16 of those things. It sounded like an airplane was taking off. Every time we fired them up, we'd load them, hit the buttons, unload them, dump them in, containers. Then we'd scoop them into their individuals. And we just repeated that. Because we could not, at the time, there was just not a hummus co-packer. There was one, and it was so big, we couldn't keep up with what, the volume. Again, that's that what came first, chicken or egg, right? It's like,
right.
Now I need a manufacturer, but the manufacturer's like, well, I need to make you 6,000 pounds of hummus. And I'm like, well, I can't sell 6,000 pounds of hummus before it expires, right? So I was in this like really just weird rock and a hard spot. So, going through UCF and the incubator, I had met a couple mentors and they were trying to help me, figure out this problem. And one of them offered to give us some working capital to build out a kitchen at East End. And we were right on the fringe of doing that. I didn't really want to own my own kitchen because it's just its own business and its own set of challenges. But we didn't really have a choice. So at the same time, I'm cold calling Publix, which was not recommending. I'm not recommending that today. But I was cold calling them, kind of a fake it till you make it situation. I used a really, really odd tactic to get a meeting. We met the buyer, and again, I knew nothing about what I was doing. And we walk in, and I took one of my employees, one of my team members with me. So it's funny because I didn't want to look like one guy show.
Yeah.
So I was like, hey, dude, throw on this polo or this. It was actually, we wore suits, which was funny. because we walk in and in front of us was Kraft and behind us was Campbell's. And it's like teams of like 15 and they're all wearing polos and jeans. And we look like we're selling car insurance. We have full suits on and ties. And, they've got really nice coolers and we've got like an igloo cooler from Walmart. It's so funny. So the buyer knew right away we were small timing, and, she actually, looked at it and she liked it and she goes, "Can you make it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course we can make it." I had no idea, right, how to make this stuff to that scale. So we left the meeting that day, and then, through that same time, I had another layer of Shark Tank. I went down, cold audition for that in Miami.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about that experience.
Oh yeah, I mean, the Shark Tank overlapped with the farmers markets, overlapped with this Publix opportunity, all at the same time. Like, I mean,
Well, how did you get on there? You just pitched your wares or your idea, or how did that happen?
Yeah, so again, I was in the Blackstone Launchpad, and they put us in like a little cohort, right? So like the group of people that I went through the Launchpad with at that time, it was early, it was new. It's so much like a fraternity or sorority for us. Like to this day, we're all brothers and sisters. Like we're so close because we all went through hell and back in that thing in our startups. So we're all out to dinner and we were all best friends. It was just so fun. It was like a hacker community. We lived together damn near, hung out together. We slept in the UCF offices. I mean, we had a blast. So we're at dinner one night and Caroline Castile was like, "Hey, did you guys hear Shark Tank's coming to town?" And I was like, "No kidding." And, we've been at the farmers markets now for 7-8 months. People are like, "You guys are so fun. Go on Shark Tank." And I'm like, "Yeah, I've been watching it since season 1. How fun would that be?" So she's like, "Yeah, they're in town." And this is Monday night. She's like, "They're in town Wednesday morning. They're doing an open casting call in Miami." And she looks at me and she goes, "You should go." And I'm like, "Dude, we're slinging hummus at a farmer's market. We're not ready for that." Like $50,000 in sales. And she's like, "Yeah, but out of all of us, like you're the only one that's actually selling stuff right now." And I thought about it, and remember, this is like 2014 now. Instagram was like it was like Facebook and Instagram. That was it, And Instagram, you just posted a cool photo, and that was it. Like that's all there was to it. And I'm like, well, the 600 followers we have will probably think it's pretty cool that we have we're auditioning for Shark Tank. I was like, well, all right, let's go. So we're driving home, and I tell the one guy that was working for me, I go, "I think I'm gonna do it, man." I was like, "You want to go to Miami?" And he goes, "Yeah." So I call Caroline and I'm like, "Hey, because you brought this up, you have to go too." So she's like, "I'm down." And so I went home, I filled out the application. It was like 15 pages that night. And we left the next morning. We drove to Miami, and I'm still in the back of the car, like writing my speech and my pitch or whatever. And we get to Miami, we stop by, the guy, my buddy, the guy that was working for me at his parents' house, which was down in Fort Lauderdale. We stay the night. We get up at like 2:00 in the morning. We drive down to Miami to the convention center, I think is what it was at. And I'm thinking like we're going to be the only ones there, right? And I get in line and we're like number 44 already. And I'm like, dang. And the audition didn't start till 9, right? So thank God we got there because there was like 5,000 people that showed up that day for auditions. And they only took like the first 1,500. And that was it. You sat in line, they gave you a number, and you walked inside and they debriefed you. And then you walked into like a voting booth kind of tent. And there's a director from Shark Tank, and you pitch them your idea. And it's kind of funny because they start off with, "Hey, listen, we're going to give you the harsh reality. Like, we may call you in 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, but we're probably not going to call you. So,
Right.
If your business is in trouble, we're not the ones to save you. This is a nice to have, but we're not, a life preserver." And I was like, "Yeah, that's cool, man. Like, I got a thriving, a farmer's market thing going on here. Like, I'm just here for the bracelet." You know what I mean? I was like, "What are the odds?" And you're looking around. There are some super dialed businesses. Ironically enough, 2 spots ahead of me was another hummus company, ironically, called Hummusphere. And they went out of business, unfortunately, probably about a year, 2 years later. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, here, I think I'm so innovative. And the guy 2 ahead of me is a damn hummus company. You know what I mean? So, we pitch and I leave and I'm like, yo, here's the bracelet. We showed it off on Instagram and, into the sunset we went back to Orlando. And about a week and a half later, I'm driving to UCF. I took a lot of night classes. I worked a day job at the time and did night class and did O'Dang Hummus for a little while, and then just did O'Dang Hummus full time and then night class. So I think I was leaving, I don't know, something for O'Dang, driving down the 408 over I-4, and I get a call from Los Angeles on my car, and I'm like, Los Angeles? And I almost didn't answer. I was like, well, let's see what it is. So I, bloop. Like, hey, is this Jesse? I'm like, yes, this is Jesse. Like, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm a casting director with Shark Tank. I went from the inside lane to the outside lane and pulled over in like, I probably almost killed 6 people. And she's like,
average day by I-4. I mean,
yeah, it really was, right? I'm just
yeah.
driver on I-4. And she's like, we loved it. The directors went nuts. Your personality, the product is so fun. Do you want to get, interested in going forward? I was like, heck yeah, man. I'm bawling. I'm crying. And, she's like, great. We'll get you more details around that. And that was like in January we auditioned. And we went through like 6 months of like Shark Tank prep where it was like, oh, you got to do all this paperwork. There's like an 80-page contract. You got to have lawyers review, and you're signing away rights and this and that to some stuff. And like, if I ever do a Lifetime movie or documentary about myself, ABC has first right of refusal. Like, just weird stuff like that. I'm like,
really?
Yeah. I'm like, if I ever get to that point in my life, you can absolutely have first right. Like, I don't care, But yeah, otherwise, like, we went through the contracts, then you got to do your pitch, and like you're doing like demo videos. So you go from like a 30-second pitch video to a 2-minute pitch video to a 7-minute video. And every couple weeks they have a right to cut you. So they start with like 45,000 people and they narrow it down to like 60.
Wow.
So for 6 months, you're just hanging by a thread. You're like, maybe I'll get on me. And the whole time I'm like, there's no way I'm going to make it to the final of this thing. And then, they called in May, one. And again, I got 2 casting directors I'm working with now at this point in time. And they're like, hey, you did it. We're going to fly you out there. Plan, clear out your schedule for this week of June. You got to go. And it was like a week later. And I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I got a full business here I got to run. They're like,
right.
You went on Shark Tank. You got to clear your schedule. So that's what we did, man. And we flew out there, and that was another just entirely wild experience. Was the whole, filming and everything. That was the craziest thing. So
yeah, it's funny because one of the things we do in one of my businesses, my marketing business, is we shoot, right? So we'll shoot commercials, a whole bunch of stuff. It's totally different than what you expect. What actually happens behind the scenes is totally different than what you expect.
Yeah.
So I think if I remember correctly, didn't you turn them down?
So on TV, I take a deal, right? So, man, my episode's like 14 minutes long. And I think I was in there for like 4 hours, right? So
wow.
The one thing I'll say about Shark Tank all day long is it's authentically a board meeting or a pitch, whatever you want to call it, that they just film. And they tell you, we start rolling and we don't stop rolling. So you have that added pressure of if you choke, there's no take 2. You just keep moving forward. So when you see people stumble when they come in or forget their initial spiel or freeze, they love that. You know what I mean? So one of the tips I got was, watch everything you give them because they'll cut and repaste, to create drama or whatever. So like at one point in time, Barbara's telling me I'm super naive. I'm naive. And I'm just like, I'm like, okay, I'm not trying to get emotional about it,
Right.
He's like, you're going to fail because you're not prepared for this. And she was right. I mean, later down the road, I did learn what she was saying. But at the time, I'm like, I'm not giving ABC anything to like, make me look like, oh, I'm so mad at you, whatever,
Become a meme or something.
Yeah, exactly. So, if you watch my episode, you'll see me like positive the whole time.
I could totally see like a little video where it's like, oh, dang, I messed this up. You know what I mean?
There was like, and I'd have to think hard where they got it from, but like Mark Cuban. So I'm in there for 4 hours. Cuban was in, and I really wanted Mark Cuban. And like about 2.5 hour mark, he goes silent. And I kept going back to him. And he's like, I'm thinking. I'm like, okay. So my goal was to get, because ABC is like, dude, your job's to make damn good television. You give us good television, you're going to get on with or without a deal. The Sharks have no idea who you are until you walk on that stage. You don't get to meet them. I don't know what Sharks I have until I walk out there. They don't know who I am. So when you walk out there, you're like staring at Kevin O'Leary. I mean, you're 3 feet away. I mean, all those. You're like, oh my God, these are my idols, right? And so my goal was to get every shark out there into a shark fight, right? That's always like the good TV, right? Like, let's get them all involved. And Barbara's on the fence, and I got Robert Hershevek goes in right away, and Kevin O'Leary's actually giving me a somewhat fair deal, and was being pretty decent. And then Lori kind of starts coming in with Robert, and then I got Cuban just sitting there. And so I'm getting there, and I'm still working Barbara, trying to get her excited because I wanted all 5. And finally got to a point where, Lori's like, I want this. And you're either going to do it with me or not. And I was like, I'm going to try to salvage this. So Hershevek's like, yo, do you want to do a deal with me? And she's like, I'm in. So I was like, oh, here's 2 sharks. That's kind of cool. So I counted them back and forth. And the part they cut out was, I said, if you'll fund every purchase order I ever have going forward, we got a deal. And she's like, deal. And I was like, oh my God, that's huge for a business.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
unlimited cash flow. So, Cuban's like, well, what the heck, blah, blah, blah. And, they took some part where I was like, oh, and that was like way before they did it with the Cuban part, because I knew Cuban wasn't saying anything. And then I was like, Mark, you sat there. I was like, you could have rebutted. He's like, he goes, nope, you made a mistake. And I'm like, you sat there quiet for an hour. I don't know. I'm not going to risk not getting a deal because of your games. So anyways, I took a deal with those 2. It was like $50,000 for 20%, but unlimited purchase order financing. I could care less about the money because at the time,
$50,000 is not that much for 20% of the company. I mean, that's nothing.
No, but at the time we had only done $75,000 in sales by the time we got on them. We were still really green, right? I had Publix pending though. And I had a $250,000 purchase order I was trying to figure out how I was going to pay for it. So I was like, jackpot. I'm like, and that's fine because I'll use the sharks as leverage, for all these future deals. So we get behind the scenes and they're real investors, their teams call me, Lori calls me, and we start, hatching out the, no shops and all that stuff, the quiet periods. And she almost immediately pulls off the table the financing. And I was like, dude, why would you that's why I said yes,
Right.
And she's like, well, I'm not saying it's completely off, and then she wanted like a year lockout period, which was really just unreasonable because we had like 90 days now at this time to get money to pay for a public purchase order. So she knew that, and she was kind of strong arming us. So as I'm going through it, I'm not dumb. I'm learning the ropes as fast as I can. I'm talking to people. I'm raising capital from other people or just seeing who's out there. And CFE, right? So now it's
CFE Credit Union?
Yeah, Addition Finance is now the new
name. Yeah.
They caught wind of everything I was doing, and they're part of UCF's network, if you will, too. And the CEO is like, "Hey, would you want to come up to CFE's corporate office and like Mary and talk to me?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." So I go up there, super nice guy, and he's like, "Listen, I got a deal for you." He goes, "If we can use you for some, kind of media, if you will, right. Like we're back in Jesse." We'll give you a which is just crazy. So like shout out CFE. I'm like a 26-year-old kid with a hummus company. They're like, we're gonna give you a signature only revolving line of credit to fund your purchase orders. And I was like, really? And they go, and we're gonna give you office space in this beautiful building for free. I'm like, jackpot. Like I don't need the sharks anymore. This is what I need, right? So I took that and I went back to Lori and Robert and I said, guys, I'll do the deal at the original deal, or I'm going to move forward with this, and that's ultimately what we ended up doing. So it's kind of funny because I've got friends that I've a ton of friends now from Shark Tank. They've done deals with Cuban, and they're like, Cuban's the real deal. My one buddy, he owns a beverage company. He's like, Cuban put $1.5 million in to begin with. 6 months later, we need another $1 million. We told Mark we were in a bad spot. We were going to go raise the $1 million. Mark's like, what's it for? He had to check within 2 days. Kevin O'Leary is probably the best shark. I mean, he is ruthlessly loyal to his tribe of investments, and he takes them very serious. So, Hershevek's okay. Lori's really good with QVC style products. anything you could sell in QVC. If it's something like that, she's awesome with. She was a fish out of water with food. That was another kind of red flag for me in that deal. Was her and Hershevek really had no food experience, and I was looking for a very strategic partner. So that's kind of how Shark Tank left off, if you will. But
so you took the deal, but you didn't end up following through with it, basically.
Yeah. So the statistic on it is, for everyone that goes on the show, about 40% on air get deals. Behind the scenes, about 40% of those deals close, right? So that's kind of the rule of thumb. The big ticket for us was, and we could really, again, 50 grand wasn't anything for us at the time. Like, we blew it that fast. We wanted to air on TV. Now, after we were kind of fighting the deal back and forth, it was coming up to season 7 starting. And it came down to, am I going to air or not, right? And lo and behold,
it's free marketing. I mean, that marketing dollar is, I mean, that's probably what, millions of dollars worth of marketing. Yeah, we talk about these football deals, right? Of how much a football team's worth based on exposure and how many eyeballs, right? I mean, that's basically, you're the USC or, the Ohio State at that point. You get that kind of coverage.
I think it was $15.7 million worth of coverage that opened, because we really, which is pretty great, all said and done, we hit Shark Tank at almost the peak of Shark Tank. That's when season 7, every Friday night families were, gathering and watching it. I mean, it's still extremely popular, but nobody's really following it as hard as they did between season 6 and 8. That was the peak of Shark Tank. And, when we aired, I mean, we did our whole first year and a half's revenue in 3 minutes of the show airing. And then we just went on to do, I mean, almost $300,000 in a weekend, which was crazy. So pretty nice.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. I was just thinking about this is a better example of this in football world would be Danny White's national champions moment, right? That was your national champions moment right there.
Yeah. Good old, I mean, dude, DW, he played that one.
Perfectly.
Operator.
Chef's kiss, literally.
Yeah.
But all right, so we kind of walked through that, and that was great as far as your origin story and kind of figuring out how that all went. So you'd mentioned scale, so you had some money to go and fulfill those orders, and then was your goal with O'Dang to hang on to it, or was it to exit at some point if you got a good enough offer?
So originally, I'll be honest, I had no idea. Right, I was just like, let's build this and see what happens. And as I started getting into it and I'm seeing these companies are selling and exiting for hundreds of millions of dollars, I'm like, well, that's fascinating. And it was really not at the precipice of my mind. Like, it was still, I don't know if this is going to work, right? When I got out of the Shark Tank deal and was going, with CFE, we had some real trial and tribulation with growth, right? Still trying to figure out manufacturing, trying to keep up with orders. I mean, nightmare situation left and right. And I was like, I really have to get someone from the industry around me because, Steve Jobs this thing. Hire people smarter than me to help me out here. And, I end up.
That's the best thing you could do, because one of the things, I talk to Josh about this all the time, and several of the other folks that I talk, business about. There was a book called Idea Monkeys that I read a long, long time ago. I don't know if you've read it, but basically it postulates, right? So you've got the CEOs and the founders of businesses that have this idea, and they usually have multiple ideas. They're ideas people, right? Mm-hmm. And then you kind of have the folks around you that are the doers, right? They're going to keep you focused, because that's the biggest challenge with someone who's an ideas person is keeping them focused, right? And then they're going to help structure the business around you. And that's kind of like from an entrepreneurial sense, I have my own ideas, but I love building others' dreams, right? Mm-hmm. So I know how to do it. I've done it successfully at multiple businesses now. And there's a certain skill set, there's certain experiences that you have. And I'm sure you said it yourself. I learned so much. And when you go through it and you stumble through it and you pivot through it, right? That's the biggest thing, is being agile. You learn. So I have the the distinct pleasure of working with others and helping them build their businesses and making their dreams come true, right? So that's kind of my thing. But the most successful CEOs that I've worked with, or founders, or folks like that, the number one thing they do from the start is they understand and usually your idea is a tangent to what your knowledge is, right? And what your specialty is. I know that I don't know everything about this. This is my passion. This is what I want to do with my time. Let me go grab other people who can enable me to do this, right? And that's one of the hardest things, I think, for some people to do, because if they do it at the onset and they truly believe it, that's good. When stuff goes sideways, which it'll inevitably go sideways, owners tend to suck it all back in, right? They want to control everything because they feel like they're going to lose it.
Yep.
Exactly. So getting that group of people around you that you respect enough to let them handle the situation for you when it goes sideways, that was really important. And it's great to hear you say that. We haven't kind of talked about that. We've talked about tech stacks and marketing and all this other stuff, but we haven't really talked about the leadership aspects too much of it. But it really does take that to have a successful business. So I love hearing you say that.
Yeah, critical.
Now, the topic for this week kind of was funding, but we've all kind of gotten engrossed with your story because it's a success story. This is, when you were talking about aspirational people, when you were on Shark Tank, there's that. And it's funny because this past week I had someone, I'm on Reddit or whatever, and there was a UCF student that was talking about, I want to be an entrepreneur. And he posted a Reddit thing on there, and I reached out to him. So we're having a meeting actually.
Oh, that's cool of you.
Tomorrow, right? About that. And, it just, the whole point of all of this and trying to bring everybody together is for that, is to kind of increase that outreach. We're working with got a meeting on the 26th with the incubator program about this and a software project that we're working to kind of support this. We're working with UCF alumni and trying to work with the business department as well to kind of build some energy around it. But the best thing you can do as a UCF alum and a successful business owner and an aspirational person like you is kind of plant the flag and say it's possible, and there's ways to reach out to people. And for you to do that, you're that aspirational person. I'm going to talk to that guy tomorrow. I mean, like, remember Jesse Wolfe from O'Dang and Shark Tank and everything else? I got to talk to that guy last night, and we talked about it, and we all share similar stories, not necessarily similar results, right? Because some people make it and some people don't, but that journey and the challenges are largely the same. So I wanted to talk a little bit about funding tonight. I've recently went through rounds of funding for a couple of my projects, software projects. I've done it before, but this was, with software. And I'd love to hear your insights, or, you kind of learned things or picked up things along the way. And if you'd be kind enough to share, some of the things that you've learned, or some of the things, tactics to look out for, because investors are there to make money. So if you're not educated when you get in front of them, they will take advantage of that. That's how they've made their millions. So, kind of talk about that.
Let me kick this off with, I go back to the Launchpad. I've done it now 4 semesters running. And, I donate, 1 day a month basically for each semester. 1 day a month each semester, so whatever, 4 or 5 office visits per semester. Where I go there and I sit there and kids can sign up and sit with me. And, usually I'm the CPG guy. So if it's a food business, they pair us together. Makes sense. And to your point too, I've got a couple, I love it, especially UCF students, that's the biggest thing I always say is I was in college, and while a lot of kids are just there to get through, to get their degree, I slowed my college degree down and went part-time to use the resources I had there, right? And that was the reason why it took me forever to graduate. So to this day, I love talking to the students and telling them, what are you racing to get through? Like, you're in a free, like, nucleus of resources. Use it, right? Like, takes you another year to graduate, but you come out with a thriving business. Fantastic. So one of the things they always come to me with, and I always laugh, is I have an idea and I need to raise money, and I go, no, you don't. And they go, wait, what? And I'm like, you don't need money. You're not ready for money. And that's unfortunately what entrepreneurship has, taught via TV and social media is, oh my God, I woke up this morning with a theory and I'm going to go raise a Series A for $100 million. Nope, that's HBO, and that's,
Yep.
Unfortunately, you got the West Coast, Silicon Valley and Stanford and that does happen out there, but they know people and it's a network out there and that's very, very, very rare, right?
Which we're trying to build at UCF.
Which we are. Yep. And, but for food, it's unheard of, right? So my thing is you don't even know if you have traction, right? So I tried to, and I'm a bootstrapper from every business I've ever had. I run lean. I love running lean. I love to get in there, find traction, understand if I have a winning racehorse or not. And then, I'm the jockey and then can I ride this thing to the next level of which is profitability, or what does that look like from there, right? So I was blessed enough to kind of accidentally run that way. Starting out, I just never thought about raising, crazy amounts of money for anything I did before knowing if it was going to work. And, even with O'Dang in the early days, I remember there's a great guy in town. We were, in a bit of a pickle trying to figure out that funding piece. And he offered me $25,000 for 25% of O'Dang. And at the time, the money was really needed. $25,000 was a ton of money for us. And I contemplated it. And I knew in my heart, I'm like, that's way too much equity.
Right. Yep.
He's a good guy, but that was a sharky deal for sure. And long story short, I ended up didn't taking it. And I learned along the way, so when O'Dang first raised money, I can't really talk about the numbers we raised due to, NDAs and stuff. But, we raised great money, at a potential awesome valuation. And I was like, that was worth it, right? And then the big deal I had contingent on that fell through, right? So part of my valuation was contingent on this deal. It collapsed because of a co-packer and the whole deal changed. And then I really got kicked in the teeth pretty hard on how VC works, how raising money works, et cetera, et cetera. So, the one thing I'll say to anybody looking to raise money is really understand your industry, right? If you're going into a tech company, a tech business, depending on the tech, and there's not a road, take like a Facebook or an Instagram or something like that, circa 2014. There wasn't really a clear path on how those things made money, right?
Right.
They were selling ads, but it was all about, let's just get this user base and then we'll figure it out as we go. Well, they burn cash, right? Like crazy. Ubers burn cash, Instacarts burn cash, those type of things, getting off the ground. You don't really have a choice. You kind of have to raise money. And that community, of tech investors understands that. You really can't go into, again, CPG and try to do the same thing, right? So if you go into a CPG company, and especially if it's your first time, and you're like, hey, I've got a great idea for a chip company, I need to raise $1.5 million. They're going to be like, get out of here. Like what's your revenue? What are your sales? How many retailers you're in, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I'm blessed enough to have, a pretty, fun career so far with innovation and building my own companies and so on and so forth. I could probably go now at this point in time in my career and raise $1 to $3 million to launch a brand. It took me 7 or 8 companies to do that, right?
Yeah, but you also have the reputation, right, that you can lean on too. That's the thing that a lot of people don't have yet, right? And going back to Shark Tank, and I hate to bring this up, but it's almost like a resume builder for you, right? Because you had the experience, you've dealt with those people, you can hook onto their reputation a little bit by that as well. And just the fact that they chose you and your idea and said, this was a good enough idea for me on national TV to say, hey, I want to buy into this, whether they did or not in the end. You know what I mean? The
biggest thing I'll tell you that I walked away, actually the joust was really, and this is again, where I'll tell anybody starting out that's never pitched anything, right? Like new to business, go to business venture things, go to pitch night, go to meetups, get on stage and talk about your product, as many times as you can, because every time you're doing that, that's ultimately what a VC pitch is, or an angel pitch, or a PE pitch, whatever. It's the same concept. You just get more granular with the business in itself. And I'll never forget when I did the joust, one of the things that resonated right away, and I'll never forget this for as long as I live, the joust, the way you got to the finals was in the semifinals. That day, you had to win out your room. In my room were 3 tech companies and me, right? One was like a healthcare tech company. One was very astute businesses, great ideas. And I'm like, oh, I'm screwed. Like, here I am again, the third attempt. I got in the semifinals and it's over here, right? And I won it. I won my room. And I was dumbfounded. And one of the judges came up to me afterwards. Remember, this is like origin, right at the beginning. And he goes, "You know why we picked you?" And I go, "No, enlighten me. I make dip. That guy's like curing cancer, basically, He goes, "Well, we don't really understand that guy's business, right? Like, he doesn't really understand that guy's business. And he's that guy. You, however, you make hummus here, right? You sell it for here. Here's your profit. Here's how you scale. You know what I mean? And then at the end of the day, this is the business." He goes, "And you did a fantastic job explaining that." And that stuck with me like white on rice through the entire journey, specifically of O'Dang. And when it came time to start raising money, whether it was Shark Tank or whatever, one of the first things that I always glued to was, from day one, we're the Ben & Jerry's of hummus. Right away, it just clearly stated what we were trying to do. And,
right.
And I don't care if it was pitching VCs or Walmart and Target and Costco. They're all relatively the similar type of approach, right? They're meetings. You're sitting in front of a bunch of people. They're both worth a lot of money, right? And you got to get across your messaging. You got to get across why you solve a problem. You got to get across how you're going to make money. And you got to get across why they should believe in you, right? And those are those rudimentary things. And if you don't have those dialed, and that's what I tell people, if you're not even really ready to raise money, still pretend like you're ready to raise money. But don't raise money, because it helps your business at its core, you understanding it. And then when the time comes, the other thing I'll tell people constantly when it comes to raising money, the worst thing you could do is cold outreach, right? So like for O'Dang specifically, we saw the writing on the wall, okay, we're scaling. We're going to need some capital to go from, farmers markets to 100 Publix to 1,200 Publix to 5,000 stores. I'm like, this is getting expensive quick, and we're outrunning our profitability, which is fine in food. And you asked earlier about the exit plan, right? That's when I really started understanding how CPG worked. And there's kind of 2 schools of thought in CPG. You're either going to get acquired by the big guys, or you have to be running hard enough, fast enough, with enough capital behind you to beat the big guys. And that's a very scary thing when you've got Clorox or Kraft or, one of those guys. And we had that with Sabra's owned by PepsiCo. So we had PepsiCo coming after us in a very volatile way. And it was effing terrifying because at that time, our yearly marketing budget was like $700,000, which to me, I was like, oh my God, we're blowing cash. They were spending $55 million a month with Sabra on marketing. And I was like, oh my God. And they were coming for our lunch. So going back to the exit strategy, you got to kind of draw a line in the sand and go, well, here's plan A. Hopefully we can make it. But if plan B comes along and they try to buy you, because they're going to try to beat you at first. They can't beat you. They're going to try to buy you. And if they can't buy you, they're really going to try to beat you. And then that's where you got to prepare for, to make that decision. So, would we have sold? It just depended on the week, how scary things were. But it was always something. And with, pitching investors and stuff, you really have to understand your business and the category you're in, because there's a difference between a check and a strategic investor, right? And there's a difference between a silent partner and a partner, and people really have to understand that when you take a check from somebody, the dynamic of your business changes. I don't care if it's a $10,000 check, you now owe somebody money, and you have a fiduciary responsibility to perform, and that is a lot of stress. It's a lot of added pressure, and I was always wide awake about that and understanding of what I was getting in with, and you're marrying that person. The partners that I ended up bringing on for O'Dang, some are great, some were awful, along the way. And I learned that lesson firsthand. Some of them were tyrants in their own respect, and some of them were great. And since O'Dang, I've done other startups and they've gone faster. We've, raised capital, so on and so forth. I've got a whole new look on life, with the way I handle partnerships and the way we raise money. We have what we call a no asshole clause now, within our Wolfpack Ventures is my, in essence, holding company slash, a subsidiary. So we have a team there that, if I have investments, it runs out of there. And if we're investing, because we're investing in a couple different brands right now. And that's the thing. If the founder's an asshole, we don't work with you. We don't care how good the idea it is. If investor's an asshole, we don't work with you. It's just, we just don't tolerate it, right? And that's what people have to understand when they're raising money. It is a marriage. It is very hard to get out of. So you better like the people you're with, and you better understand what you're getting, into.
Well, and that's the thing too, right? So there are different ways that people they will trade their money for, for something, right? So they're either going to trade it for shares, and if they trade it for shares, as you said, they're taking a lot of risk there. So they're going to want to see your financials. They're going to want a seat at the table. They're going to want to, make sure that you're making decisions. You're going to have to meet with them and explain yourself. Yeah. It's different than a loan, right? Someone's doing like a loan type of arrangement where you're getting X amount for a certain percentage over a certain period of time with a repayment period of this. They're going to be less hands-on, right?
For the most part, right.
And then the other part about it is just when you're going through and setting up your business, like one of the things I always do with mine is I always have a certain percentage that I have set aside, and I'm not going to go over that, right? And then there's things like anti-dilution clauses that you can inject in there, which is basically a poison pill, right? So something a lot of business owners, when they do this, don't think about is, okay, so you get shares there. You've got a higher percentage of shares. So you've got 51% of the shares at least, right? And you decided you wanted to cash out on some of them or something, right? So you've got a board of directors, you've got more investors. If you don't have your legal language tight up front, okay, it can very easily turn into a situation where the board all of a sudden is issuing more shares, and your percentage, your 51% now becomes 25% because they've issued so many shares.
Yeah.
Or if a VC comes in or somebody like that comes in and they want to pick you apart for parts or, whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
You're introducing the Wolfe, to use your your name, into
the hen house. That's right. Yep.
So, you have to be careful with that. There's certain things that you can do up front. Make sure that you're speaking to people that know what they're doing, or definitely engage with a lawyer or go and actually do some sort of consulting with someone who's done it before, because that can save you on the front end of your business from losing your business or losing a lot of money on the back end. So,
and on that note too, there's a bunch of different ways. I always tell people when they come to advice for advice about raising capital, there's a million ways to raise capital, different structures and setups and stuff. And to your point about going and finding someone that's done it, there are people, we've done it, here and there in the past, or I've done it, I guess, rather here and there in the past too, where, hey, I believe in what you're doing. I think we can raise money on this thing. Cut me in on what you raise, right? Don't pay me now, pay me in the back end, right? Whether it's equity or, whatever. And we go get the job done, and I've done that a couple of times. And I'm mad because I didn't do that, right? Because I know better now, right? When I did my first ever round of raising, and it was painful. There was a lot of very sleepless nights, and I was scared, and I'm trying to find people to call to ask questions to and stuff. But the one thing I was really nervous that I didn't do enough, and it worked out all right. But looking back on it, I was like, that was dicey. Do not be afraid to call their other investments. Hey, just like a job. How many investments do you have? I've got 9. Can I speak to 9 of them? Can I talk to the CEOs, right? If they are hesitant and refusing to let you talk to them, it better be a good, I don't need to know about the business itself. I need to know about you and your partnership with them. And one partner in particular, it was not a pleasant experience, and they fought me on calling and reference checking them. They gave me one. That was, I found out later that was kind of a personal friend anyways. And yeah, that was brutal, to me, that certain person. And I was like, dang, man. I was like, check them like you would a reference, for a job. And you'll be surprised. You'll see quickly, oh my God, that person's amazing. They're, if I need them, they're there. If I need help, they're, whatever. That's the biggest thing I could say. And on your point about the dilution and stuff, yeah, I mean, the other thing is if you're going to take money as a loan, in any capacity, right, whether it's convertible notes, etc., you got to really start thinking through before you even sign what that deadline looks like. Okay, I'm going to run like this. This is plan A. We should be able to repay the payment back. If I don't, I need to have a plan B going now, right? Like,
right.
If I get to month 8 and it's a 12-month, loan, what's the shit plan? What am I kicking into to avoid that conversion? And you got to make sure that they're not blocking you from raising capital without, their say and stuff like that. First right of refusal, all that legal language. I mean, there's some sneaky stuff. I've seen angels and VCs.
It's funny that you said first right of refusal, right? Because I have that in all of my agreements.
Yep.
For anybody who sells stock, even as founders.
Yeah.
Right. So, if you're gonna sell stock and you're gonna cash out, I'm gonna make sure that the company has first right of refusal so you don't lose control later on.
Bingo.
And that's a huge thing.
Oh, I've seen, I'll never forget this poor kid, man. It was a young, they were probably my age, I guess, at the time. They had an incredible food company, and we're at a trade show, and I saw this big expo. I saw this product. I'm like, this is phenomenal. And I'm like, this your guys' company? They're like, yeah. And I'm like, man, I've got a great VC I'm working with. They would love an idea like this. Like you guys, they're great. They're going to help you. They've done great for me so far. And they're like, yeah, well, we just lost the company. So, and I'm like, what do you mean? They go, we're really just employees of it now. They got in a spot. They got diluted out through, basically shares. And they're like, we lost control, And I've seen it, especially in our category. If you're not careful, and it's funny, it's shifting really, really hard right now in the last year in CPG. CPG used to be scale at all costs, right? Burn money, open as many doors as you can, get as many hands as you can, we'll back it, right? And you got, at one point I was watching, food companies getting 13, 15x multiples on sale. Just almost tech money, and that's shifted hard, due to the economy. And over that time, if those people were not careful and they raised too fast and grew too fast, and I've seen people sell companies for $300 to $500 million and walk away with a check for $1.2 million.
Yeah.
And they got diluted, and they were the founder, and they get their name in the headlines and life is good. And they're basically, I don't want to say broke, but they're not sitting well enough to retire in life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like all the investors did. So scary.
And that's even if you get diluted down to like a 40 or a 30 or a 20 of a $300 million deal, it's not $1 million.
That's pretty good. Yeah. I've seen it time and time again in our space. that's the dicey part of our spaces. It can be very capital intensive if you're not careful, if you have the wrong products and stuff. And it sucks because there's a lot of fun products that are just harder products to bring to life. Like I said, fresh products, for instance. You want to see them thrive, but they're very expensive. And now with technology, like, social media and, oh my God, TikTok was just jet fuel on our industry for growth. If you don't move fast enough, if you try to move slow, you'll get ran over, right? Because for us, it's really hard to have IP around the product itself. You can't really patent food. If you do, you're basically posting the recipe for the world to see. And then you alter it 10%, less sugar. You don't really taste the difference, and they got your recipe, right? So for us, it's all about brand building and moving as fast as possible, safely as possible for growth. And it's a hell of a balance. It's very tricky for sure.
And Rod, if you're not seeing this live, I don't know if you see it on your end, Jesse. Roger's popping in and out of his tornado warnings and whatever else might be going up there. He's up in the Panhandle at the moment.
Oh, okay. I was wondering what part of the state he was in.
Yeah. I don't know if you're still in the Central Florida area, but that's not happening on my phone.
Yeah, no. It's been a little crazy last couple days in the next 24 hours. So normally it stays north of us because I'm in Santa Rosa Beach. So it normally stays north of us, but it's decided to come across the bay and we're getting all kinds of warnings. But all that being said, the last thing that I kind of wanted to touch on, and I know we've taken up way too much of your time. We usually do an hour show, and this has been great. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of break it up and be like, okay, Jesse's life story, and then Jesse's tips on funding, right? And we're very appreciative of it because it's a great story, and like I said, it's aspirational and inspirational for people. The other thing that I would say, when you're looking at that is also make sure you have a clause in there that puts a minimum for what a business will take before it's sold, right? So, for example, a lot of businesses will put $10 million in there. So if you have investors in there that say, okay, $10 million, well, guess what? They get the idea that they want to exit out of the business. You don't have a say. Whatever they sell for is whatever it sells for.
Yep.
And you lose control that way. So whatever that minimum is going to be for you. And then also, like we said, understand what your your strategy is going to be. If you have an exit strategy and that's your goal, revenue is king, growth is king, and as well as revenue growth and the number of clients that you have, right? Because people are looking at a 5-year plan and what they can return on the investment. If you're not in an exit strategy, then profitability comes into play. But realistically speaking, unless you're completely running it into the ground, those are the plays, right? So grow as fast as you can, get as many clients as you can, get as much recurring revenue as you can. Recurring revenue bubbles are key. And when you flip it on the other side, when you're looking for profitable, then it's more, Jesse, kind of what you're talking about, with slowing it down, understanding, making sure you're profitable, running as lean as you possibly. You should always run lean no matter what. Yeah. But run as lean as possible.
I'll tell you, it's a funny conundrum, right? Not to cut you off, but on the lean factor,
no.
The craziest thing that's ever happened to me, I guess, was the first time I raised capital. You get a giant chunk of money put in your bank account to grow the business. And then, you gotta, the investors are going to want the strategy, right? How are you deploying the capital? And, here I am, I'm going, all right, dude, I got 3 to 5 years of runway. And they're like, no, spend it. And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not. And they're like, no, you don't understand. Spend that money. Money means growth. Growth means speed, right? And that was a really, and to this day, like I said, I do things my way now when it comes to building businesses. Just, again, I paid my dues. It's a luxury, you don't get coming out of the gates. We, for instance, in the food space, when I started, you went retail. That was it, right? You tee it up, you raise money, you get traction, you raise money, you go into retail and expand to retail. It's completely different nowadays, right? We don't even start with retail. We always try to go e-commerce, direct to consumer first. We get a ton of cash flow coming in. I get to control all the profitability from day one, and it's a cash cow. It's beautiful, right? If you do it right. And then when I go to raise money to really accelerate growth, it's a completely different beast, right? Because I have profitability under me, but now I get to scale. It's kind of the best of both worlds. And I really get to be more picky about what partners we bring in, much better valuations. The terms are in my favor. That's super rare, for sure in this space. But when you bring on investor money, an investor does not want that money to sit in the bank account. They want it to go to work. And that was a mindset for me where I was like, oh my God, I am uncomfortable, having to deploy capital at this rate. And now I get it. I see why. And there's definitely a fine line of being responsible, being smart with the money. I mean, I've seen people blow through millions of dollars on some of the dumbest spends, that you could think of because, well, that's what the investors wanted. The investors also, while they might be strategic, the other thing I'll say on that front too is they might be nice people and check a lot of the boxes. They're good partners. You really have to understand who the visionary is, right? So like for us with O'Dang, for instance, we were very disruptive in our categories, right? So we came in hummus. We were very disruptive in hummus. We came into salad dressings. We were extremely disruptive in salad dressings, for instance. And our investors at first glance, they were like, the dressings are a good idea, but they're not anything special. And I was like, you're not seeing the vision here. I'm like, this is 2016, 2017. Beyond Meat and stuff was just kind of starting to pop off. And I'm like, plant-based is going to be, I'm very good at spotting trends, I found out. I'm like, plant-based is going to be massive. And they're like, no, focus on hummus. Like, the dressings will be a nice to have. So I pushed quietly to my investors, none the wiser. And our Walmart deal ultimately landed because of the salad dressings. And that was That's our awesome. That was the biggest deal to date. And I strategically had to lie, if you will, to my investors and tell them we were not pushing the salad dressings. Meanwhile, I had taken my sales team quietly and I told them we're not selling hummus for the next 3 months, push salad dressings. And let's see what happens. And I had a fight to prove to them. And in that, our hummus did really well for us. Our salad dressings skyrocketed the business. So here are a group of people that have built some of the biggest CPG brands on the face of the earth telling me, nope, that's not going to work. And I knew the trend was coming and we were ahead of the trend. And boy, so while people are very smart and you want them for strategic reasons, sometimes you see things they're not seeing and you just have to do what you have to do sometimes to explain it or show it or prove it. And for us, the Walmart PO was the traction we needed for them to go, you're right, let's roll. So that was fascinating as well.
Awesome. Yeah, like that's so many little nuggets. It's when I go out and I consult, especially with a lot of these small businesses, they have and these owners that are starting things, they have no idea about any of this.
Yeah.
So just building your cohort of people that you can trust and that you can go to, and then also knowing when to spend a little money to talk to someone who knows what they're doing, or like in your case, when you're investing in others and you're opening your door for them to kind of talk them through some of these issues. One, again, and I know I said this earlier, investors are not out to make you money. Investors are out to make themselves money, right?
Yeah.
And number two, it's your job to be educated from day one as a founder.
An investor and a mentor are two different people, right?
Yes, 100%.
Very rarely will you find a mentor that becomes an investor. It happens, right? And I've had a few along the way where actually Mike O'Donnell was a very prolific person, still is in my life. He told me when I first started, kind of kicking around the idea of investors, he was investing in some small businesses and stuff at the time. And he gave me a great piece of advice. And he goes, if you want my money, ask for my advice. If you want my advice, ask for my money. And to this day, I still hold that true. And what that boils down to is go to people you trust, ask them the right questions that you genuinely need answered. And if you follow through and you perform and you listen and, odds are they're going to offer to help and back you. And that's the dream scenario, because then you get someone who truly has seen you grow, wants to see you continue to grow, and is now helping fund you, right? But yeah, if you're going to a VC or a PE or even angels that are just cutting checks, investors and mentors are two different things. And a lot of investors will kind of say, "Hey, I'm here if you need me." It's not what you think it's going to be. They're there for themselves. And at that point in time, if you're coming across kind of sketchy or you're doing some things that they're not liking, their first reaction is, I got to protect myself and my investment, and out you go. We're going to bring in someone that's got, a decade of experience to save this thing. And I've unfortunately seen that way too many times, where they bring in CEOs. And even O'Dang's path, I knew there would become a day where I was going to step away as CEO, because for us in my space, there's two options, right? You stay with the company and you ride it completely to the finish line. And what happens is when it gets acquired, you end up working for one of the big guys for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and I had, again, networked like crazy and met a lot of people that have sold. And, some will stay on and they like working for the corporate structure because, they're kind of a one and done type of person. I accidentally built Kind Bar. It's going to sell, and I don't mind working for the buyer, for the next 5 years. I'm going to retire after that. I like the startup, phase, which is insane, right?
Oh, that's the rush. It's the best part.
Yeah.
It's the most fun.
It is.
Where you make the memories. It's the smallest group of people. It's where you are doing silly things like working till 1 o'clock in the morning and having beer and pizza, or, having breakfast on Fridays together as a group before you hit work, or whatever, right? It's addicting. It's a rush. If you look at my LinkedIn, it says serial entrepreneur. It's because of the early stages of it. I've lived the corporate life. I've been C-suite. Like, it's so much more fun to do it. It's a lot of hard work. But if you got good people around you, it's a whole heck of a lot of fun.
It's a game. Every day is a puzzle, and I always tell new entrepreneurs, I'm like, do you like fires? Like, what do you mean? I'm like, you're a firefighter. Your job is, even as you get up into a pretty healthy emerging CEO, of a business. I mean, until it gets really like up and fully humming, and you've got, big teams and stuff, there's still some fires, but, in those earlier stages, and I'm talking, we had a peanut butter company that's, after O'Dang that, we got it to $10 million in like 2.5 years. I mean, that thing was, it was so much fun because, each fire every day was a new fire, they were bigger and they were faster. And that's what I like doing too. I really enjoy. We went from O'Dang, which was retail, to I flipped 180 and went hardcore direct to consumer e-commerce with food, and then everything in between, and learning Amazon. And oh my gosh, you just get to do what you want whenever you want. And with O'Dang, I knew I had no desire to spend 3 to 5 years working in a corporate company. I did a little bit before O'Dang with O'Reilly Auto Parts. I was a store manager, then becoming a district manager. And I used to get in a lot of trouble trying to help the company. And that was the most insane thing to me. I was like, I can make you more money. And I got written up. It was the strangest thing. I got written up for breaking a store record, in essence, a company record, because I didn't do it by the books. And, it later became, which is kind of funny because I never took my write-up away, but it literally became a company policy that they changed. But, I'm like, you're punishing me for making you guys more money. This doesn't make any sense. So, you have to understand that there's going to be a day where, you might not be the CEO of your own company. And, that could happen with or without your approval, so
Yep.
Scary.
All right. I think we probably should put a pin in it there, because at this stage of the conversation, we'd be going to the bar and having a bourbon and continuing that conversation for probably another 2 or 3 hours, because it's been great for me, and as someone, I have so many things that I could talk to you about on experiences I've had or experiences that you've had, and it's a way to learn, because there's things that I have not experienced and things that you have. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. I hope, honestly, offline, without the tornado warnings and everything else, we keep in touch.
Yes.
Is there any, like, if you were to say, I'll ask you 3 questions, one word or one story answers, succinct, like 1 sentence answers. All right. Craziest story from your time at UCF, craziest story from any time at O'Dang, and what's one thing that people don't know about you that would embarrass you?
Okay. Crazy. Probably one of my craziest UCF stories was I almost got expelled from UCF for O'Dang Hummus. They had just launched, those like inflatable T-Rex Halloween.
Yeah.
Those had just come out, and we found them on Alibaba. They weren't even in the States yet, and it was like $30 at the time. And then we laughed and we bought one, because I said we were all about disruption. So we had a couple interns, that's another whole story. A couple interns that worked for us, which is just more college kids. And so the suit came in. I told them, put the suit on, and we're going to put you in an O'Dang Hummus apron and go around, and we'll take photos with all the college kids. Well, this thing was like so awesome at the time. Now everybody's got them, but it was like the first one anyone had ever seen. And I got this poor college intern running around campus in this 7-foot tall inflated T-Rex. And in the College of Business, I thought, wait a minute, they're live streaming the business class, and it's got like 3,000 students in it. So I told the intern, I'm like, run into the door, down to the professor, hug the professor, shake in front of him so it says O'Dang Hummus, and then run back out. So, he does it. He runs down. The professor was blown. I mean, we disrupted his whole class. He knew who I was. I was the O'Dang Hummus guy. So and thank God, Dean Paul Jarley's the greatest. He brings me up to his office. He goes, I'm being told I should expel you for this. I'm not going to, because I actually think this is great. He goes, but don't do it again. He goes, I like it, but I don't like it. Just tread lightly, So that was hysterical to me, because I was like so pumped about the idea. What was the second one? I lost the second one.
All right. So craziest story.
Craziest O'Dang story. We were going to a sales meeting in San Francisco. We had to take hummus with us. And this is we had a bunch of crazy stories for O'Dang. But anyways, we loaded it in a cooler. We taped up the cooler. And when we get to the airport, we're checking in, and they make you put it in like a special area, right? So that gets on the plane or whatever. We get out to San Francisco. We're like, oh, we hope it made it. We need these for a huge meeting with Safeway. Well, out, where the luggage area is, where your bags come out and go around the thing, the cooler comes hauling ass out the top down.
Popped.
Just explodes.
Oh, my God.
I mean, it sent like 80 tubs of hummus like rolling through the airport. And I mean, like rolling too. Like, people are like, what was that? And now it's going around the carousel. There's tubs of hummus and people are picking them up. And I was like, airport security was just so bad. That was one of those stories for sure. And then, an embarrassing thing about myself. Probably that I'm terrified of heights, I guess. And I hate flying. And I had to do like 380,000 miles of flying up till COVID for O'Dang. I'm not proud of that, because it's like, I'm a pretty brave toaster normally, but man, do I absolutely hate flying. It's like my least favorite thing on earth to do.
So I don't like heights either, but I'm good flying. Put me on top of like a skyscraper where stuff is moving around and all that. Nope. Give me an airplane, put me behind a Piper or something like that. I'll be happy to fly it, or put me in a jet. I'll be happy to be up there. But man, yeah, heights, I'm the same way, bro.
I used to be the same way about planes too. I had a couple entertaining flights, we'll say, and that kind of changed my perspective on that a little bit. But yeah, I'm the same way. I had a board meeting one time in New York City. We were actually at UCF still with Blackstone Launchpad. We got to meet Steve Schwartzman, the founder of Blackstone, and he's like, "Yeah, we'd love to host you up in our office." And I'm like, "This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. I'm going to go." And he's on like the 65th floor of a skyscraper, and I'm like, I'm going to black out in this elevator, So, and when I got out, I was so embarrassed. I got out, the doors opened. You're on the top floor of the skyscraper. I'd never been that high in a building ever, like maybe 20 stories. And it's 3-story glass windows overlooking.
Yeah.
And I froze. And he, his assistant, she was like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "No, I'm not okay." So I got used to it though. But yeah, heights is not my thing.
Awesome. Well, Josh is gonna finish up showing again our software version on that. Josh, this is the 3-minute version because we're at an hour and 41 minutes.
No problem.
So,
a cut for time.
Jesse, I can let you go. Believe it or not, I actually had, I guess, a tornado touchdown about a quarter mile from here.
Oh my God.
While we were live on the show. So
stay safe. Stay safe.
Yeah, that's a first for me. But
yeah.
But yeah, Josh, if you want to run through that, Jesse, thank you so much. Let's stay connected outside of the show because there's so many things that I feel like we could talk about. So
yeah, shoot me an email and we'll start picking up from there. And I appreciate you guys having me on. Stay safe.
Yep, thank you so much. Have a good one.
You too, guys. Good night.
All right. Jeez, that was amazing, right?
I think I've got enough content for 2 shows.
Absolutely. And you're right. We absolutely could have gone on for hours. And that's when you have a good conversation and you're working with someone and listening to someone that has that great insights, it just flows. And I was looking at time like, oh, yeah, let's just let it ride.
I just let it ride. If anything, we'll cut it up and we'll put it out as multiple shows. I don't know, yeah. But I think we live streamed it. It's going to be there. I think I'm going to go through and actually edit the YouTube video once it's out there and try to cut this up because I didn't want to cut it. Right. I didn't want to cut it for a number of reasons. One, Jesse's story was great. He's so affable. So many little nuggets in there. And I think there's honestly 3 people's worth of content in there, 3 hours worth of content easily. So
absolutely. All right. So I'll be quick then, because this will be at the end of one of the 3. Right. So I'll be pretty quick. So I'm so excited that we're just starting on this part of what we're doing here at UCF Business Talk Live. This was, as I said earlier, built earlier. This is what I said, depending on when you're listening to this, hours ago. But we're really trying to get people to connect together and help each other out, just like Jesse was talking about. You, Roger, were talking about a little bit too. So we're gonna do something kind of live. You know what? I'm not going to do it live. I was going to present it, but we'll just do it in post. Here's the URL. It's a URL any UCF fan knows and would be used to, especially if you hate being called golden. So back in, I think, 2004, I realized that GoldenKnightsClub.com, when the GKC was the fundraising UCF athletics branding, and we were still, I believe at that point, Golden Knights, was available as a URL. It's been almost 20 years. And being the I wasn't even a graduate, I think, of my master's at that point at UCF, I was like, I have to buy this, because if I don't, someone from USF is going to buy it and then redirect it to their fundraising website, which I would expect. So I've owned.
Wouldn't that be gold speed ahead for their current one?
Yes. So I've owned GoldenKnightsClub.com for almost 20 years, and I have no use for it at any point. I even tied it to a G Suite when it was beta, but I had no use for it. And when we're talking about how to connect UCF businesses together, sometimes branding is useful. GoldenKnightsClub.com is something that many of you will probably know. So right now, just live as of the last day, GoldenKnightsClub.com is rebranding as the UCF Business Owners Guide. And it's a quick web app built by UCF students. It's all UCF driven. And right now you just type in a quick form, and we ask things that are a little different because the goal here is for us to share. So we ask you, what can you do for other businesses? What can other businesses do for you? What do group partnerships look like? What do you need help with this quarter? And we'll have some updates on that just to make sure we're in the right quarter and whatnot. And there's a little optional section there to let us know what you want to see here. Because right now, what you have is a sign-up sheet and a link for the business owners. And hey, guess what? You're going to see Roger and me over there with how we can serve you and do all these things. So, and if you want to see the students that are a part of this and maybe another picture of me too, that's on our About Us to meet the team that built all of this. So what I'd ask you to do, go to GoldenKnightsClub.com. Join us and other businesses. Sign up. Right now, this is 1.0. This is an MVP, and we're going to be iterating this hopefully every couple of weeks through the summer semester, because an internship team of UCF students is working on this. And hopefully we can use this to find a very quick way to find other UCF owners that can help you with whatever you're looking for. So if you're looking for someone to do some marketing, if you go to GoldenKnightsClub.com and go to business owners, you can use the search to look up marketing, or you can just go to Roger because he's right there. Maybe Rob too when he gets in there too. And you can do some searching and find out what helps you. If you want to get to some real estate agents, if you're coming here from the message boards, there's a couple of people I'm sure that'll sign up to. So GoldenKnightsClub.com is our business community tool, and it is a ever evolving tool. We're going to use continuous improvement and continuous development to grow it to as big as it can be. So that's what we built, and we'll get some screenshots and we'll see it another time because I don't want to spend all the time that we have left and get to 2 hours.
Yeah, so one of the things that we'll be looking at doing is making it, from a user interface perspective, easier to filter, maybe exportable. There's things that we want to do and be able to keywording on that. So at the end of the day, what'll end up happening is we have enough folks that are on here. You'll be able to filter out, okay, I'm looking for someone who can help me with software development. You put that keyword in there, and then it pulls everybody there. So encourage you guys to use it. Again, very early stages, as Josh said, continuous improvement, but we started it, and we'll continue to grow it, and we'll get it where we want to be. And honestly, it's a tool for you. So make sure you use it. It'll help us work the bugs out and help us with use cases that we may not even be thinking of. So thank you again. Josh, honestly, I think that's it. I mean, it's what we've survived tornadoes, multiple tornado warnings, and it's been a lot of fun, and honestly, it's been phenomenal. I'll say, when you're going out and looking at rounds of funding, different types of people who are providing you funding will be looking for different things. If you need any help, or if you would like some consulting or something like that, if you're thinking about these things, I'm available. You can reach out to me. My LinkedIn is on there as well. And we appreciate everything you're doing, Josh, and helping us build this. And the rest of the guys will be back next week. So any closing thoughts from you, Josh?
No, if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, lots of discussions about community building and some of the projects we're going through. We have about 3 products that are all wrapped around this idea of building better communities. What we have on goldenknightsclub.com right now is kind of the baby version of it. It's the initial version. What Roger was alluding to is something actually we're growing for another industry that's being built right now. And then we have this entire other just insane platform we're trying to build out, which might be at the end of this year. So just follow me on LinkedIn to get some insights of where that's going. And if you have any technology assessments needs, or if you want to move all of your tech stack to the cloud or anything technology related, I can help you through Tech Think Tank, or I can help you with someone that can. And then I will shove them into the business owners group on goldenknightsclub.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. I think we'll call it for the evening. And as well, my other business, Seven Lights Marketing Agency, my ever-growing empire. Again, if you have any digital or video or commercial or any type of marketing needs, we're a full marketing agency and we'd be happy to help. Thank you so much for tuning in this week, and we'll see you again. I don't know if we're going to film for a couple of weeks or to break this episode up or how that's going to work, but we'll see you again soon, and go Knights and charge on.
Go Knights, charge on. Thank you, Roger.